And showtime, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the latest episode of the ChannelPro 5-Minute Roundup. We'll look at news, trends, and tips for the SMB channel in 5 minutes or thereabouts. I'm Rich Freeman, executive editor of the ChannelPro Network. With me, as always, is my co-host on this fine program, Eric Simpson, who is CIO and senior vice president of SPC International, a training and business improvement organization for managed service providers and other IT providers. Eric, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Rich. Just got back from the ChannelPro SMB Summit in Baltimore, as did you. So what a great event. And now I get to catch up on all kinds of stuff that I've been neglecting from lots and lots of travel recently. How about you?
You know, the exact same story. I got home last night. That was the end of a 2-week nonstop stretch on the road. So it's nice to be home, and I'm catching up on a lot of stuff. It is a little funny that we're broadcasting from 2 different states, even though 24 hours ago we were both in the exact same place.
Exactly.
Well, let's dive into the news of the week here. And once again, it involves Kaseya. They've done a pretty good job of doling out the news in small increments and keeping our attention. We talked about the Unitrends merger that Kaseya announced recently on an earlier episode of the show. This week, the Kaseya Connect partner conference is going on in Las Vegas, and they had 2 stories out of Kaseya this week in connection with that. They have released an updated edition of their RMM product, which is called VSA. Which is interesting because it combines RMM functionality with network management functionality. So today, Kaseya has VSA, which is their RMM product, and Traverse, which is their network management product. They've taken some of the functionality out of Traverse and built it directly into VSA. And they are kind of headed down a path where they're going to be pulling those 2 solutions together more and more closely going forward. So that was one of the stories that they had this week. The other one was the launch of a new dashboard or control interface, probably a better way to look at it, called Kaseya One. And Kaseya, like a lot of the big names in managed services right now, they've got this wide-ranging integrated suite of solutions: RMM, PSA, network management, security, etc. They've now created a sort of single pane of glass management interface for controlling all of those solutions. So those are the 2 big stories from Kaseya this week. Interesting news, obviously, for Kaseya partners, and maybe interesting news for other MSPs who are looking into these integrated suites and interested in products that have that single pane of glass control experience and very, very tightly integrated functionality.
Right. And on last week's episode, Rich, we did speak about the horse race now that we've got going on. We talked about, the traditional, PSA vendors that are integrating and creating these relationships with different products, services, and vendors. And now we see Kaseya, coming on strong now. And it's very interesting, as you mentioned, how they're releasing this information. It's almost, a very strategic way to continue to generate interest week over week over the past several weeks that we've seen with them. So, they're all competing for the same pool of IT providers. So I can only expect this to become even more competitive, and looking forward to the response or reaction from ConnectWise and Autotask, Datto, and those folks.
And we will not have very long to wait, I'll say. Towards the middle of next month, mid-June, ConnectWise hosts its Automation Nation event in Orlando, and I'm scheduled to be there, actually. I'm sure they will have some news about at least their RMM product and maybe some of the others as well. And simultaneous with that, while that event's going on, the DattoCon event will be taking place in Austin, Texas. I'm sure both of those companies have some stuff coming up.
Yeah, I would not be surprised.
Well, let's take a look at your tip of the week. It's a slightly unconventional one.
It is. I think that, as I've been presenting sessions at different events and conferences, most recently the ChannelPro SMB Forum in Baltimore, I always mention several books that I recommend to the audience. So today's tip of the week will be a book recommendation. And my book recommendation today is Secrets of Question-Based Selling by Thomas A. Fries. Now, this is a book that it turns sales process conventions a little bit on its ear in terms of, while it fits within the framework of the sales process, what it teaches you to do is to ask the right specific types of questions all along the sales process to get the prospect to basically sell themselves on your services. So not only does it teach you to go after the low-hanging fruit, we always, go identify the immediate pain, right? But what Mr. Fries teaches us to do is to also bring up and add weight and value to the latent needs that the prospect may not be thinking about while we're sitting there in front of them. So we're going to qualify them for the immediate pain. We've got that done. Then we're going to qualify for the latent needs and really explore all of the facets of opportunity that we have with the prospect. And then by asking the right implication questions, increase the buying temperature. So what's the worst thing that would happen if we didn't address this quickly? So it really helps accelerate sales velocity. I believe it builds confidence and trust much more quickly when we're using question-based selling methodologies, and it shortens sales cycles. And it really presents us as more of a consultative subject matter expert when we're sitting in front of our clients. And as you know, Rich, we espouse the consultative sales process as much as possible at SPC. It helps you increase your rates and increase, the value of each one of your solution sales and things like that. So, I recommend everyone to go pick up a copy of Secrets of Question-Based Selling.
And we will include a link to that book in the posting for this episode up on the website. So take a look at that. The concept of identifying latent pain is just a really smart sales idea, but it's especially smart in the technology realm, where so often, and particularly with SMBs, so often they don't even realize that something they consider inconvenient, say, can be fixed. They just don't know enough about technology to know, for example, that this issue you're experiencing is because your routers are out of date, or you could be using a faster service or a different cloud provider. There are so many inconveniences associated with technology that business owners will just accept because they don't know any better. And if you know the questions to ask to kind of point them in the direction of those issues, I would think it would be very effective.
Agreed. And it also distinguishes you from everyone else that comes along that's not asking this breadth of questions and diving deep into uncovering the implications of not addressing these things and helping to prioritize them. And I always, you're going to end up with a huge menu of opportunity when you're doing this. But the important thing to remember is you want to phase that in over time. You don't want to overwhelm the prospect with everything, but you want to make sure that you're noting things down so that you can come back to them after we fix, the immediate pain and maybe a couple of the latent need issues right away. But as we're coming back and doing our QBRs, we're remembering that value information from those initial discussions, and we're continuing to build out that client solution roadmap for the client to help them, address these things in a way that they can budget for and prioritize over a longer period of time. And that, again, creates a lot of stickiness.
Well, great stuff. Check out that book and check out or think about that kind of consultative sales approach. Really smart stuff for any MSP. And that leaves us with time for just one more story, which I thought was kind of an interesting thing that I read about yesterday. The National Bureau of Economic Research has a new study out. They got a whole pile of data from a German e-commerce company, and basically they utilized it to compare credit default rates, credit worthiness essentially, for this company's customers. And they looked at what they call passive information, just the really basic stuff that you're always kind of giving up to a website in terms of what browser you're using, what kind of device you're on. And they wanted to see if they could predict, just based on that information, whether or not you would default on a loan. And if so, how accurate that would be compared to, say, your FICO score. And what they found is the data based on your passive information about device and browser and so on was every bit as accurate as predicting your likelihood of defaulting on a loan as your FICO score, which sort of suggests that going forward, as more and more people become aware of this, there are going to be more and more organizations tracking your every move on the web and actually using that information to decide whether or not to extend you a loan. But just a few sort of interesting little details from this. Some of the study's findings are subtle. Customers who placed orders through cell phones rather than desktop computers were more likely to default. The use of a largely outdated email service like Hotmail or Yahoo was an indicator of a high default rate. Customers who incorrectly entered their email address defaulted 5.09% of the time. Those who didn't, 0.94%. So that's right, folks. Your typos can actually cost you the ability to get a car loan someday.
Makes me think of another consulting business opportunity. Maybe we can teach these folks, you know, hey, if you want to look really good to your lenders, you know, use this type of equipment, make sure this is all correct. You know, it's one of these things where you prepare somebody kind of like for an SAT almost, but very, very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. It's another one of those things that, at least for a certain period of time, your customers might not even know that they're dealing with. And you can position yourself as the expert by letting them know. You want to type those email addresses carefully, because otherwise it's going to affect your interest rates.
Very well.
Well, that is all the time we have for this week's 5-Minute Roundup. Thanks for joining us. If you want to keep up to date with the latest episodes and know about future ones, I encourage you to subscribe to the ChannelPro Network channel on YouTube. I also encourage you to visit the ChannelProNetwork.com website every day. We've got lots of great new content for you about managed services and IT opportunities, business trends, etc., all the latest news from the industry. If you want to know more about Erick and SPC International and the great services they provide, you want to go to consulting.spc-intl.com. That's consulting.spc-intl.com. Until next week, thanks again for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your week. We are enjoying the rest of your week already.